工研院也是做兼任讲师，都是教这个 technical writing， 所以他对我们这个学术写作哈，尤其是台湾人常犯的一些错误，非常的了解。那再来就是后来他也是有上一系列的课程。那今天我们特别请他来帮我们讲，就是有关怎么做 conference 的 presentation 哈，因为我们主要是反正是我们物理治疗系哈。都有这个就是 seminar， 就是 graduate student 的 seminar。那我们要求 student 都要用 English 做 presentation。那希望他们出去做 conference 啦，或是不管任何的 formal 的 presentation， 可能有一个比较好的训练。所以今天很有幸请到好 Mr. Wallace 来帮我们做这个题目的这个讲一下这个技巧，还有重点在哪里。那在外面要听这个 Steve 的课哈，要花不少钱哈，所以我们今天很荣幸可以把他请到台大医学院来做这样演讲。那很欢迎大家来聆听，那就我们掌声来欢迎 Mr.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. It's good to be here this morning at your lovely school and to see all of your bright, happy, smiley faces. This is great. I always have the morning class in Jiaoda, and my students come in and they look so sleepy. So sleepy. So the first thing I do is turn the air conditioning very cold. When you're really cold, you can't sleep. You know? And today it's already cold in this room, which is good. Cold is the teacher's best friend. And today I'm here to talk about presenting at conferences. This is a class that I usually teach for an entire semester. In Zhongyang and in Jiaoda. I have 12 hours a week now teaching this class. And my students are usually PhD students who must go to a conference and present, but they are very worried, you know. They are very afraid of speaking in public. And today I want to just give you an overview about conference presentations, and I want to share with you too some ways that you can gain confidence for your first conference presentation, or your second, if that's your second one. But I believe that this is Han Zhong Yao, because people don't appreciate what you do until you speak about it, or until you write about it. These are the vital skills that we need in every domain. Doesn't matter what we do in the laboratory, if we never tell anybody, how will they know? How will they appreciate our contribution? So technical writing and public speaking, these are the two things that I teach. And I teach in the engineering school to those students who really need it very, very much. But it applies equally to you in medicine as well. You also must share your results. You also must write and talk about what you have done to be appreciated for it. And I want to begin with this idea that I just introduced, that the person who presents the research will get the credit for the research. An example of this is Paul Chu. He is credited as being the first person to have a semiconductor with a boiling point above liquid nitrogen. You know, Paul Chu was not the main researcher. The two researchers were Jim Ashburn and Ma Kuan-wu. But they asked Paul Chu to present because his presentation skill was very good. And even though Paul Chu said, these are the real researchers, no one remembers them today. Because he was the presenter. The presenter was the credit. Another example here, Jen Sheng. Postdoctoral researcher discovered another superconductor at an even higher temperature, but because he was not a good speaker, because English was not his first language, the department chair, Alan Herman, spoke at the press conference. Even though Herman told everyone that this guy was the real researcher, no one remembers him. Alan Herman is the one who gets the credit. We cannot afford to not speak well. It's vital to gain appreciation for what we have done and for our ideas. Now, you have all probably seen bad conference presentations. I have seen too many because I always go and watch my students when they present at conferences. And I recently was at a conference and saw kind of the classic bad example. The student got up, went to the front, sat down, opened his paper, started to read in a low, dead voice. As I watched him, 20 people in the front stood up and walked out. And when the student looked up, it was empty. I mean, it was just me and a couple other people. People don't have patience for this today. They don't have time for it. They are busy, and especially at a conference with several sessions. If they think this one's boring, they're gone. Our first job is to keep the people there. Our second job, don't let people go to sleep. That is so important, because if people are sleeping, it doesn't matter what you say, they're sleeping. We have got to make sure that we are being interesting and being informative. Interesting too, very critical here. Oh, regarding the speech that I just was telling you about, the student kept talking. He didn't plan well for his conference time. He spent, 10 minutes talking about the literature review in a 12-minute presentation. So finally, the chair said, "You're finished." And he's like, "I'm finished?" Time's over. He didn't even get a chance to talk about any of his results. He went all the way to the conference to talk for 10 minutes about other people's research. And then briefly at the end started rushing through his own, flipping through slides at crazy speeds that no one could understand. Finally left. Complete failure. We have got to have a plan, and we have got to be prepared if we're going to make a good impact with our conference talk. An effective conference talk needs to do two things. Persuade your audience with evidence and be interesting and entertaining. I say both of these because it's not enough to give evidence to a sleeping audience, right? It's like talking to a hotel. There are people sleeping all over the place, and nothing is getting across to them. We also have to keep them awake. So we should talk instead of reading. Stand up instead of sitting down. Move around instead of staying in the same place. Make eye contact with your audience. Don't look at only one side of the room, look at both sides. And students always complain about this to me. They say, "Teacher, I'm scared at looking people in the eye." Especially because some people, they don't look like nice people. Their faces are just so mean, and I don't want to look at them. And so I tell them, "Well, then don't look at that guy. Just put a block on him." Find 3 happy faces in your audience. It may be difficult, but it's possible. Yeah. Hopefully, they're in different places. So you find a happy face over here. Lady in the orange. She looks very friendly. Okay? We look at her. And then we look at the lady in the blue. She looks like a sweet lady. Okay? Over here. And then we look at the tall guy in the red. Okay? So you just keep looking back and forth between your 3 happy faces. It gives the feeling you're looking at everybody. And don't look at those people who are taking your energy away. That have the ugly faces and just keep looking back at you. Look at the positive people. And finally, imitate good speakers. When you go to the conference next time, watch the conference presenters. Find the ones where people are awake. Find the ones that are interesting and steal all their ideas. Copy everything, especially in your own domain. You're in medicine. Find a good medical speaker. Copy him. Don't copy the politicians on TV. That's a different style. But find someone who's related to your domain and observe the audience reaction. Look around you. See if people are sleeping or not. If they're not sleeping, start taking notes. What is he doing? What can we copy? What can we steal in our own presentation to improve? Now, why do sometimes very smart people give such poor talks? Well, it's a reaction to fear. Psychologists tell us that we are naturally afraid of being away from the group because when we are, you can see my flaw and my fault and my problem and judge me and criticize me. So naturally, we don't want to put ourselves in that position. We want to be part of the group, to match in. Biologists tell us that in nature, if an animal goes by himself, he is eaten quickly. If he's part of the group, he can survive longer. So there is a very natural fear, biological fear and psychological fear of being alone by ourselves in front of people. So we need a good reason, a strong motivation to overcome this fear, and I already mentioned that motivation. It's the one that presents the research gets the credit. That's what our motivation is. I want to talk about a couple of Nobel Prize winners, and I want to contrast their speaking style with you briefly this morning. The first one is Bohr, physicist, and then Volhard, geneticist. Both of them won the Nobel Prize for their contributions. Both of them were ESL learners. They were not English as a first language speakers. Bohr was famous for being boring. He has a reputation. I mean, in his day, nobody could listen to him. Even Einstein didn't like listening to him, and we'll hear a quote from Einstein in a moment. By the way, Einstein was a wonderful speaker. Very, very interesting, very entertaining. Everyone loved Einstein. There's a story of when he went to Japan. He talked for 2.5 hours, and then he quit, and the Japanese were so disappointed he didn't go for 4 hours. How often does that happen? That a scientific presenter wants them to go more. Usually we are happy it's over, but not with Einstein. He was a fantastic speaker. He was a showman, you know, the hair, everything. He really knew how to get the audience's attention. He was a wonderful presenter. Now, Bohr had a really hard time. Here are a couple of scientists talking about Bohr's speaking style, and then I'm going to show you his Nobel Prize speech. Whereas Einstein tried to grasp the hidden essence, disregarding everything he thought irrelevant or not related. Bohr insisted that nothing be left out. So Bohr wanted to include every painful detail, which means that people gave up quickly. Einstein tried to ignore all the details and only focused on the key point. Made him a great speaker. Here's another quote on Bohr. Bohr was much worse. His failing was that he used too many words to express any idea. Wandering about as he spoke, often inaudibly. It means can't hear him. So here he is talking to himself.